Dr. Quorum, I mean, Dr.
We have a quorum. It's 2 o'clock, perfect timing. I appreciate my colleagues being here. Let's get started. Ms. Polino, Mr. Carrozza.
So real quick before we get started, we'll cue up the slides. This is the feedback that we started to collect throughout the year. We're going to present that to you. I do want to stress to the board how important this feedback is, because this is at a time where parents aren't looking at maps or aren't looking at impacted schools. So you really get a good sense of the feelings of the community when it comes to the feedback or information that they want to share as part of this process. As you saw when we went through calendar changes, there's a lot different types of feedback you'll receive once schools are named. But this is a good, real litmus test for you to see and understand what the community is saying at large. And I'll turn it over to Susan.
And as always, we'll just direct everyone to the website. We're going to speed through the first few slides because they are background information that you see in many presentations. Board policy that anchors our work is 4150. We're aligned to our strategic plan in several areas, as we've discussed on multiple occasions. And of course, we're in step 4 of our current planning cycle. And so just as a reminder, we've actually already had the review of the annual goals with you. We did that in May, and so the public engagement sort of wrapped around that same time period. So we're bringing you what we have so far. But before we dive into that, just a quick reminder of what we shared with you in March. Prior to getting started, we heard from the community that they'd like ways to participate before final decisions are made. They want to make sure they can participate before final recommendations are made. They want to make sure that they have the opportunity to share their unique perspectives, and of course that they are regularly reminded about the opportunities to participate. So what we've done to support that, again, we talked about this in March, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but we're making sure that we have activities early and before recommendations. We make sure we're using every communication modality that we have available to us and offering both synchronous and asynchronous opportunities for families to participate. In addition, we're making sure that we send those reminders out as regularly as possible using our known communication methods, and that way the parent's preference is honored. If it's a text, if it's an email, it's whatever the parents have indicated they prefer to get the messaging format in. And then, of course, we just like to remind everyone it does have an impact, to Mr. Carrozza's point. Because of feedback received in prior years, you're seeing that we have expanded stability rules that the board has continued to support, which have been favorably, very highly favorably received by the community. Looking differently at how we open our new schools so that we don't overcrowd them in their first couple of years. We actually have taken a slower, progressive path forward in terms of developing attendance areas for those schools. So that'll be germane to this year's conversation. Enhancing neighborhood and cohort continuity. There's a lot of calls for, can our 5th graders go on together with 6th grade and 8th graders go on together with 9th grade? Can we do a little bit better job of creating those cohort continuity opportunities for families? Having more access to planning resources, and the list goes on. Before I get too deep into today's presentation, just the highlighted red text at the bottom references the current draft of the public engagement report, which is attached to the materials. This is the first installment, so please bear with me. There's probably a handful of typos and errors, but it's draft 1, and it only gives you information up through today. But that does do a look back. So for those of you who've been engaged in the process for the last several years, we did have some initial conversations in the Northwest with the Parkside Middle School families when we originally thought that school would open ahead of the high school. So we have included that feedback because it is germane to the region. So you'll see that we've done a look back over the last 4 years, including Parkside Middle conversations, Morrisville High School conversations, and general conversations. So what did we do this year? This is your new information on slide 18. We participated in the full revamp of our district website and made sure that our new page, our assignment planning page, not only persisted, but adhered to the new formatting requirements. We added a whole section called What Happens During the Assignment Planning Process, and in that section, we made sure that we that we updated everything in that section. So all of the links for steps 1 through 6 are for this current process versus the previous year's process. So the updated forecast, the updated capital improvement plan, all of those links are now curated and updated to this cycle. The where are we in the process section, that is a new section, and again, to help families quickly find, what can I do now? Right. Yes, it's good to know what the history of the process is, but where are we today and how can I engage? The session questions for 27-28 in the school enrollment planning has been updated to reflect questions we've captured so far and that we've been able to collect responses to you for so far. And I say that because a lot of questions we get are for other departments, and so we lean on our colleagues to help us answer questions, particularly at the high school level, academic questions, athletic questions. And so as we get those responses, we'll continue to update this section of the website. And then we've added the spring 2026 information to the feedback from engagements, sessions, and impact area maps section. And so in that area, families can see the geographic group of families that were invited to our in-person sessions because it's most germane to those families, as well as any information we've collected from our live sessions. And we'll get to some of that in a minute. So what kinds of sessions have we hosted? So beyond the website, we hosted 3 different types of sessions. The first group of sessions were in-person sessions specific to the New Morrisville High School, and we're starting to tag that Eastern Wake community early with the 2 schools coming in the future. We've then had some virtual information sessions to support that. This is specifically because of feedback last year, where, hey, I missed the in-person session, felt like I had no opportunity to participate in the discussion. So we did a double up and made sure we had an information session that was virtual that paired with the in-person session, so families could either attend in person, attend the live virtual session, or watch the recording. So we sort of expanded all the ways people could participate. We made sure that our thought exchanges corresponded to those as well. And then we hosted 2 special focus sessions that were billed sort of as general sessions, so they were out in the general community messaging, but we made sure to highlight that we really were gathering input from the North Raleigh area and the Central and Southeast Raleigh area. 2 areas that have started to see some stabilization. They don't have a lot of new schools coming, but they probably have different types of assignment concerns that need to be lifted up, and we wanted to make sure we gave space for that. The thought exchanges that supported these ran from March to April for the ones that were dedicated to the Morrisville High School campus and the East Wake area, and then for the larger, more general ones, so that they didn't overlap, we launched them on May 1st and kept them open through the 27th, and that's really just to make sure we could get some information for today. We have not yet hosted our AI focus groups or AI-supported focus groups or interviews. We're planning to do that in the coming weeks. Invitations should be going out. I think I have that on a different slide. I don't want to misspeak. So we'll be sending invitations out. As a reminder, people can go on our website, click on the I want to participate in focus groups, and that's the list we use. Right now it's a little over 5, I want to say maybe 600 families have said that they're interested in participating, so we don't restrict. I will say that's something, just as a reminder, the benefit of doing the AI-supported interviews, I can send it to all of them, and as many as wish can participate, or if we do live traditional focus groups, I'm restricted to like 6 to 10 participants per session. That really restricts the amount of voices that can be lifted up and heard. So that's why we really rely on the AI-supported interview process. So again, everything that I'm sharing with you and more is in the attached draft of the first version of the public engagement summary. In fact, that first digital assets number has already gone up to 4,827 views, so we are continuing to see people using our website as a main way of staying tuned in and informed about the process. Just a quick snapshot, we had 31 participants participate in our in-person sessions, almost triple that, actually a little over triple that participated in our virtual sessions, and even more through the views, and that's just through May 25th. We know that those numbers will continue to climb on the views. As far as the online forums go, to date we had 374 total participants across the 4 thought exchanges, posting 235 thoughts. And to Glenn's point, at this time of the year, it's those that are keenly interested, but we'll probably see an uptick in participation once we do a first draft release and actual maps are shared. Just to let you know, the types of questions we're asking our participants and our community members are here. We tailor them to the specific conversation for that region, so that just is highlighted here on this slide. And when we had the in-person sessions, this is just some samples of the chart papers that were where we collected feedback live from the participants in a round-robin kind of format. All of this has actually been typed up neatly and is on our website in that information session area with the impact maps, that we wanted you to see a sample of the artifacts that are collected during these in-person sessions. What we really heard when we kind of looked at that in greater detail from the Morrisville High School session, and I'm just going to say it out loud, proximity and neighborhood continuity doesn't matter where you live. Those are top of mind for everybody. So proximity and neighborhood assignment stability came up as a main topic, really thinking about where the physical building is located and how families can access that site. There are some calls, bless you, for a walkability area, that maybe the New Morrisville High School is in an area where students may even be able to walk to school, and so they just want staff to keep that in mind as we're developing the attendance area. Resource parity, this always comes up, particularly when we're talking about high schools. Are we going to have the same course offerings? Are we going to have the same clubs? Are we going to have the same athletic opportunities? Are we going to be able to participate in the same types of scholarship programs? All of the things that are very uniquely high school. Just lots of, hey, academics team, athletics team, please make sure that we've got the same access to the high quality programming that we would if we had stayed at our full school, our 9 through 12 school that's already open. Feeder pattern and cohort continuity, again, similar to proximity, comes up in every area. Can we have a logical path from our elementary school to our middle school, and middle school to our high school? And then overcrowding relief and operational execution. So this one is very clearly a Northwestern area concern. As you may be aware, vast majority of our CAP schools are in this region, or at least over half of them are. And so the community gets that and understands that and wants the new school to provide relief. And any other school, sort of assignment area changes that are made in this community, they want us to focus on providing relief to those CAP schools and better utilizing some of the schools that might have some extra space. When we're talking about the Eastern Wake area, the core themes that came out of that in-person session, we're just acknowledging that there is new and rapid growth coming to this community that's very different than what this community has experienced in the past. And so just be mindful of what that's going to do to the current schools while we're waiting for new schools to come online, and please help make sure our class sizes are not impacted negatively. And so I think as a district, we still hold to class size legislation, particularly at the K-3 size. So regardless of how full your school is, your individual classes and student to teacher ratios will meet those standards, but it does feel like the school is very full when a lot of students are walking around the hallways and accessing playground equipment and cycling through cafeteria during lunch periods. Family support and childcare. This is a very unique concern. I think it's probably not unique to the community, but was lifted up, that having access to before and after school care options that are associated and affiliated with the school is very important for working families. Programming and course offerings, similar to what we talked about at the high school level, but at all schools, making sure that as you change an assignment area for a student or open a new school, that we're mindful of the fact that programming should be consistent from school to school. And in the eastern area in particular, with 5 schools actually having magnet designation, being thoughtful about how there's differences in the academic offerings from one school to the next if one is not a magnet school. When we looked at the online forum, we gave, again, specific prompts to the conversations for the area, so I'll let you read these, but they were each tailored to the conversation for that particular portion of the county. And then here's what we start to see when we look at the Morrisville High School. Not very much different from what we heard in the in-person session, but perhaps a little bit more granular because individual thoughts were listed out. Here you see a more granular approach to the themes with continuity and stability having the most number of thoughts. Second in number were proximity to school, and a close third is school zoning. When we look at how those thoughts were rated, you see that extracurricular activities ended up jumping quite a few spaces and becoming the highest rated series of thoughts and comments. Neighborhood cohesion sort of tying it, and proximity to school kind of staying in that same space where it was for total volume versus ratings. So again, I remind you that the ratings are important because they allow the small voice to be lifted up, because if everyone sees that comment and gives it a 4 or a 5 rating, that lets you know that even if there's only 1 or 2 thoughts about it, it's important to the community. And it also takes that volume and sort of adjusts it to balance out across the other thoughts. We're going to continue to look at this information. The interactive version of this report is on our website, so you can get, all of our families can go there and see that. I'm not sure if all 4 thought exchanges are, because the ones that closed on the 27th, it was a bit of a tight timeline. Those will probably go up later this week or next week if they're not there today. And then just the top 3 thoughts, just by overall ratings, all had a rating of 4.3 or higher. Actually, they were all 4.3s. Talking about nearby radius, need for local space schools, keeping neighborhoods together, or neighbors together specifically. And then, again, I think this is on that equity piece, making sure that the staff have the resources they need to offer the high-quality programming, particularly when we're talking about a new school. When we look at the eastern area comments, similarly, you see a broad distribution. The 2 highest volume of thoughts were in categories like equity and inclusion and growth and planning. When you see the ratings, equity inclusion remains at the top, but family involvement or facility investment actually comes up number 2, which I think is supported by your capital improvement plan because you have dedicated a significant portion of the budget to support schools in this area. Again, looking at the top thoughts, a little bit more variation. You see investing in the current schools, not just the new ones. That supports your approach to renovations. The Eastern Wake don't have the same magnet options. They do now have 5 schools that are available to them, and they're mirroring a lot of the programs that are in the central area, but just keeping that in mind that the program offerings are still highlighted as important for this region. And then, again, you saw this on the in-person session, just concerns about class sizes and making sure that student-to-teacher ratios are maintained despite the rapid rate of growth that's coming to the community. When we look at the Central and Southeast Raleigh area, this is one that I'm not sure that the link is on the website yet, because again, we closed this one super close to the deadline for putting information together for today's discussion. But proximity to school and distance concerns were highlighted. We have thought this was a concern for some of our Central and Southeast Raleigh area families, but it's good to see their voices lifted up and the thoughts actually sort of bearing that out. Notice that mental stability pops up as a specific series of thoughts or a theme. Calendar consistency comes up, community alignment comes up. And then when we see what happens when they start rating them, distance and proximity to school still stay in the 1 and 2 positions. And community alignment kind of advances up a little bit. It becomes the 3rd highest rated series of thoughts. One thing I draw your attention to here, this is the same for all of them, but just a little kernel. Anything that's a 4.5 or higher star rating means there's real strong consensus or alignment in the community around that topic. And as you can see, distance concerns and proximity to school, there's no doubt that there's consensus around that sort of idea for this community. If it's below a 3.5, then you kind of have a little bit more of a 2-sided approach to it with different perspectives. But if it's anything above a 4 or 4.5, that can let you know that there's some consensus around that idea. And as you can see, the comments align with that, and all of the top 3 thoughts related to distance to school. When we look at the North Raleigh area, so this is the area that's, well, the North Raleigh area, everybody knows where North Raleigh is. Proximity, stability came up as the top 2 in terms of total number of comments. Overcrowding, pure consistency, and long-term planning sort of rounded out the last 3 themes for this one. It had a little bit lower participation than we had anticipated, so we may need to continue to engage this community. But this is our 3rd round of engagement with this area because we had started this conversation 3 years ago. Looking at the STAR score ratings, proximity elevates, stability is right up there with it, even pure consistency and candidly overcrowding kind of came up, which is interesting because most of the schools have been balanced, I take that back. This is an area where you have some imbalances, where some schools are overcrowded and some schools are under-enrolled, and so perhaps some adjustments to boundaries could better utilize the campuses and facilities in this region. Long-term planning is up there, but it's not quite a 4, so there might be some either-ors in that one in terms of the ratings. Proximity and location and neighborhood, proximity to home, and then children not worrying about where they're going to go year over year. This is something we've shared with you in previous sessions, that if we're going to make changes, if we can sort of get them done and then move out of that area and leave it alone for a while, there's a lot of support for that we're hearing more and more as the years go by with this form of public engagement that we've been doing. But if we are going to make big changes, let's get them done and then provide as much stability as possible and then not keep coming back to that area for incremental adjustments. So the one thing we haven't done yet, as I mentioned, are the AI-supported interviews. So here's that schedule that we're planning to follow. We're going to be sending invitations in the next week or 2. We're going to try to make sure all of the participants have successfully completed the interviews by July 19th so that we can bring summaries to you for obviously in time for September, but we want to make sure the planning team has access to those before any initial recommendations are formally drafted and shared with the board. As any of that information becomes available, we'll post it to the website, but we'll also share it with you in September when we see you again. So what does this mean for the work? What it means for the work is I think we have a clarion call that stability is still very important, and we need to continue to find ways that if adjustments need to be made, can we provide as much stability for existing students as possible? And when we do make adjustments, let's make sure that they are adjustments that can stand the test of time. I know we say the 3-year period is the shortest window with which we would want to reassign students twice, but we really would prefer for it to be much longer. Calendar continuity, it is, while it didn't bubble up as a discrete thought, it still continues to come up. We're hearing more and more calls for K-12 calendar alignment on this side of the conversation, right? When it's your school that's changing, it might be a little bit of a different perspective, but just this idea that when my high schooler gets onto the traditional calendar, it just creates conflicts. Is there any way that we can have more opportunities for traditional K-12? And that's just coming out of the general comments. Cohort continuity, I've mentioned that a couple of times. Capacity management, really looking at improving the balance. This is actually new to this round as a clarion call or a point. We've heard it sort of in a roundabout ways, but for families to really say, hey, I think it's time, let's rebalance the schools a little bit so we can have, the overcrowded schools can get some relief and the underutilized schools can be lifted up, particularly when they're in the same region. And then the policy guidance. We have obviously a lot of families talking about proximity and of course stability, and those are highlighted by families throughout every region that we've sort of connected with, but we need to balance that with our need to maintain our student achievement and operational efficiency goals. As you are aware, all of our schools are located in the areas that they are, regardless of what the residential development looks like around them, so it's physically not possible for us to assign students to their closest school across the district. There's just not enough seats to do that, and then some schools on the edges, of the county would be woefully under-enrolled, so we have to figure out how to balance this call for proximity with our need for operational efficiency as well as our student achievement goals. And with that, we would come next to you. The next time we make a formal presentation to you would be September 1st, and that would be the initial draft with any updates to the public engagement summary based on the summer work and reviewing the thought exchanges with a little bit more time. And then we may determine if additional sessions or thought exchanges are needed. If they are, we'll just roll forward with those and report those out to you as we come to you on September 1st. And so with that, Vice Chair.
So slide 22, where you show the number of participants, and then comparing that to like slide 30. And I know there's multiple slides designed like slide 30, where you show like the top ranked comments. I'm trying to get a sense. So for slide 30, for example, it says 1 of 168, 2 of 168. Those are the number of comments, not...
For that particular thought exchange. So for the
Correct.
Morrisville thought exchange, of the 235 thoughts that are up there, 168 were made in the Morrisville exchange.
Okay, out of the what? Say that
The
again.
235 you see on this slide,
Yeah,
168 came from the Morrisville session.
okay.
It had the highest rate of participation, which makes sense. It's a new school that's opening, it's a high school. More families are impacted.
Okay, and the total, if I may, the total participants for the online, I'm looking at 22, again, slide 22, is 374. Is that in addition to the live sessions or the 31 and the 114?
I gotcha. Yeah, so the live sessions are where we go to a school, go to a meeting
Right.
center, so 31 people physically showed up to those.
Yep,
When we held the complimentary virtual sessions and the general virtual sessions, when I added it all together, 114 total individuals came to and attended those during the live session. So those are two separate numbers.
Yes, yeah.
And then for the online forums, 374 people went in to one of the 4 thought exchanges and left 235 thoughts. So we did have a lot of looky-loos who were going in and looking and rating, but maybe not posting thoughts. And that's important too.
my last question, do you put the feedback you get from the live sessions or the virtual, the 31 and the 114, do y'all put those into the thought exchange so that you know?
No, we put those onto the website, and then when we're looking at it holistically, we look at what happened here as combined to what happened here, and we bring it all together, and that's part of what this report is for, is to do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So there were a couple of things that were a little surprising. I do want to thank you for putting all this together and also the timing of it, because, we get a lot of this dropped right before we have to make a decision.
Right.
You don't have time to think about it and take it around and talk about it. So one of the things that I noticed, and actually I'd like to hear from some other board members about this if they've heard anything, when they had the respondents in the Southeast region talk about calendar. Is that something you hear about? I know with like Southeast Raleigh High School being on a modified calendar, is that a challenge for families or parents, or do they like that and embrace it? What do you all hear?
I mean, I think, well, for my part of Southeast Raleigh, which covers like the very minimal part, of the year-round schools that we have, I mean, it varies from family to family. Like some families they really enjoy it, they really like it, it fits their schedule, while others do not, and they go through the transfer process to select a different school. So I don't hear a lot from parents in the schools that I serve in the Southeast Raleigh area around.
That consistency? Ms. Russ, do you hear anything in your schools about that?
Most likely just the traditional space. It just doesn't meet a lot of folks' needs economically.
Okay.
You know, because you have to, it's different than taking care of younger children's needs in a group of 2 months at a time versus every 9 weeks you've got to find somewhere for your children to go. And then it's not necessarily, a lot of our City of Raleigh spaces get filled up really quickly, and so it's just not an economical space for, I'll say, the majority of families. There are some families who can, clearly, that lives in Southeast Raleigh. Everyone is not of an economic straight, but there are families who can, but predominantly it's our folks looking just like traditional. I don't know if they're saying something different, but most importantly, as we've seen on these results, it is what I continue to share and will continue to advocate for, is to take the families of Southeast Raleigh back to their region, to their district, closer in proximity. And then as a district, we work together to meet supports and resources that are necessary, because if we're talking about wanting families to be more engaged and more supportive in their child's education, you can't keep sending families far away and think that they're going to be able to support their school and be able to participate in their child's school if they can't get there based upon how they work, where they work, and home is here and school's 20 minutes away, 20 miles away. It's just not. It's the same thing that families in Southeast Raleigh, as we even see by our numbers today, have been asking for and saying, and I think that at some point, we need to figure out how to listen, what that listening looks like, and then the bigger elephant in the room is my district is the last district to change with gentrification, so what does that look like after it shifts in the next 5 to 10 years completely? It'll be like the rest of the City of Raleigh in this area, so then how does that now then affect families? And then I think the conversation is going to change over time in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to change again, so.
I did want to add, while calendar continuity doesn't seem to be, I don't hear a lot of issues with calendar continuity in the area that I serve. However, I have heard from families that don't understand why they are not, the priorities around magnet.
Yep.
They do not understand that. They don't understand, while the district is saying magnets are supposed to diversify, and when you have Southeast Raleigh, who is continuously, in my opinion, being left out of the priority for magnet programs. That is something that I constantly hear about.
Dr.
Thank you. I was just looking at the bar graphs comparing like the North Raleigh area with the other ones. So I noticed that the other ones have like 8 items on it, and this one only has 5.
Lower participation, so not a lot of diversity in thought.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the
But I
other,
have others from previous years that have more, so we'll look at them holistically together. And if we feel like we need to re-engage the community another time, we will.
okay. Yeah, I think it would be important to attempt to re-engage them in the North Raleigh area.
Ms. Rice?
Thank you. I know that we're trying to move on a tight schedule, but I do have to reiterate what Ms. Gordon has indicated. It's very important to me, constituents that I hear from, and someone who's lived in the region, is relooking and reimagining our magnet priority when it does come to Southeast Raleigh. You have a lot of families, as I said. Just because you live in Southeast Raleigh doesn't necessarily mean that you are without income, and that and it also doesn't mean you're not an extremely involved parent. And so we have a lot of parents who live in the region who want to attend the magnet school, but can't attend the magnet school, even when there's space, and they're denied because of whatever our rules look like for magnet access. And so that's, I must admit as well, that's a huge, I have to listen to, and then I try to defend the district on that side, and honestly, I don't want to keep defending something that I know needs to change, to go along, to get along. And I think that's something that we need to intentionally and purposefully look at, and hopefully that our superintendent hears what we're saying in that district to look at, to make sure. And it does not create all poverty, and just because people come from poverty does not always mean that they don't know how to support their kid, and that their child won't learn, and that they won't be engaged in that learning opportunity. So I wish we would shift the narrative a little bit on that piece, and that's it.
Mr. Haggerty.
Yeah. So, in keeping with the magnet discussion, real quick, but just and for future, just looking at the way that the socioeconomic status is determined, because I feel like what a determination is may not actually line up with the reality. And so I've encountered that many times up in my area, where this just doesn't seem to make sense. So just for future discussions.
Mr. Haggerty, close that.
So, yeah, I said I had lots of questions, but I don't think we have time for lots of
Well,
questions. So I have two
Let me
quick
just say
ones.
that
Yeah.
any questions or additional comments, please send to staff, CC, our chair, and we're going to do that for all the meetings today, just
Okay.
like we would in a budget meeting. Like, please continue to ask questions.
So two things. One, I was bringing up the calendars and things because, like this past time when we had the conversation about calendars, it was good to kind of get that out there and ahead. In my area, I know that you asked about the Northwest and some of the schools, and maybe some of it's in North Raleigh, but we have a lot of issues with middle schools and middle school attendance, with West Millbrook having, high capacity and most of the other middle schools having much lower capacity. One of the schools that every couple years we talk about, but I haven't heard anything about recently, was Hilburn Academy, which is K through 8. And I know originally when we set up that program, and it's a wonderful program, it was intended to be like a remedy for overcrowding in the area. But I know that recently it hasn't had as much attendance as well, with parents opting to go elsewhere. So I didn't know if you had looked at Hilburn, if you had looked at that in any middle school reassignments. Are there any plans for that?
So we can certainly do some outreach. I know you had brought this up, I think it was probably last year.
Yeah.
We looked at calendar concerns, so we can continue to do some outreach, but there are certainly some cost savings to the district if we do look at dispersing those students to the local middle schools that do have available seats.
I think it would be good to hear from parents in that
Yeah,
area
definitely.
and really see, are they voting with transfers, or are they really embracing it? And then just the last thing is, I didn't understand in the slides, you frequently come back to cohort continuity, but then when we see the graphs, I don't see cohort continuity. What is that actually coded on?
When you see like continuity and stability here, there'll be thoughts in there. So what we do is we look at all of the exchanges and figure out what the individual discrete thoughts are that are building each of those themes. And what we're deciding based on what we're hearing across the board is that feeder pattern or cohort continuity or moving along with peers, lots of different ways. Some people even refer to that as stability.
Okay.
And the way that they write their comments. They'll say, I want a stable path for my kid to go from blah, 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 blah. So when the AI grabs it, it just sees stability. So that's where that human eye is very important.
Like freedom from reassignment?
Right.
The last thing I'll leave with that is
Yes,
that
not everybody thinks freedom from reassignment is
I
stability.
typically only hear cohort continuity as a priority when someone is assigned to a school they don't want to. And they want to go to the school that their peers that went to that same elementary school did.
Yes, yes.
I don't hear people wanting to come out of like Mills Park to West Charlotte, for example, for cohort continuity. It's usually the other way, so.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Perception of school is very important and part of that conversation for sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're good?
Yes.
All right, so we'll see you on September 1st.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please call any questions and we'll engage all of our community.
Item 2, I have Dr. Hill. Are you coming up?
Dr. Walker?
Oh, Dr. Walker, and then I'll let Dr. Walker introduce everybody.
That's Melissa's, so that's good.
Musical chairs here.
Thank you. When you're ready, Dr. Moore.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. I always feel so far away from you. So of course, you see, I'm not flying solo this afternoon. I've got my colleague, Julie Malik, of course, the Senior Director of School Accountability, and we so appreciate her partnership on this topic. And of course, my team member, Ken Jorgensen, who is the Director of Alternative Education. And so I'm really just going to kick us off, and then Ms. Malik is going to drive through the bulk of it, and then Ken will wrap it up. Mr. Jorgensen will go ahead and wrap it up. And so before we dive in, of course, it's the Alternative Schools Accountability Model. And this perspective from us is really strictly about this accountability model. So that's the lens we're coming from. We're really not focusing, of course, on the limited time of the merits of all of the alternative schools, right? We could spend a few hours going through that, but I do have a particular slide on that which we'll look at. But we're really looking at the mechanics of measure is kind of what I want to highlight. And what I want to make sure to leave you with, you're going to hear it now and we'll probably clarify it at the end. Every school has an accountability model, right? But alternative schools is different. If we could look at the second slide. And so this is really a glance at all of the particular alternative schools. And I wanted to break it up towards the application where that's usually referral from their school of origin. And then we have schools that are disciplinary reassignments. And then on both sides, but I wanted to highlight certain schools that are focused specifically for our students that may have an IEP, and with that highlight. And so every school, again, having the school performance grades and the indicators, and this is a supplement to that, right? And so that's what we want to highlight. It's not meant to be less, but it's meant to ensure that we reflect this student body is different, and it looks in the sense of size for often these programs and schools. And so the state, as Ms. Malik will highlight, right, they highlight that we have another opportunity here to look at these. And so I also want to highlight, I'm just going to address it, you'll probably maybe bring it up later, right? I do want to highlight, again, the connotation of alternative. And that's a DPI designation, right? But for those of you who go out to our schools, to kids, a school is a school. And, you know, like for Connection Academy, we don't have Connections Academy alternative school plastered at the beginning, so everyone kind of can see here. And so I just want to highlight again, as I've told you before, we own that connotation. And these are students that need an alternate route to get to graduation. And so with that, Julie, I'll go ahead and pass it off to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, folks.
So before we talk about how we address the accountability for our alternative schools, just going to do a quick review of the accountability for non-alternative schools. It's the 80-20 model, which I know you've heard and been debated for years, but just as a review, for the elementary and middle schools, it comprises of not just proficiency in the 80%, but it also includes an indicator called EL Progress, which is the progress towards English language attainment of multilingual learners based on the access test year after year. So that is part of this 80% block. And then, of course, the 20% block is our growth calculation, as we're aware. At high schools, there are additional indicators. It's, again, not just proficiency. It also includes the 4-year graduation rate. EL Progress, again, at the high school There's an item called Math Course Rigor, which is how many seniors have obtained credit in Math 3. And then there's a measure that considers the ACT and the ACT work cues assessments. There's also a growth piece of that. So the 80% versus 20%, just as a reminder of non-alternative school accountability models. And that will come into play with our alternative school accountability as well. So as Mr. Walker mentioned, we've got special considerations for alternative schools in North Carolina statute. There is a opportunity for an alternative accountability system for them within North Carolina. However, that system is a supplement, and at North Carolina, it does not substitute requirements under the federal ESSA mandate, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So in essence, we have kind of two arms of the accountability model for our alternative schools. The most flexible is under our North Carolina system, and we have 3 options. And you all were kind enough to approve our plan on your June 2nd meeting, but this is just a quick review. Option A, no changes. They go back a few slides and they do that 80-20 for that. Option B looks similar, and this is a North Carolina DPI system where 20% is called a persistence measure. So these are the percent of students that persist in a North Carolina or persist in school throughout that year, which a lot of times is the great benefit of offering these programs to give the students what they need so that they can persist in school. So 20% of the modified model is persistence. 20% is that 80%. So all of those indicators that are wrapped in the non-alternative school accountability model is 20% in the modified model for North Carolina. 60% is EBOS growth. And those designations come out as progressing, maintaining, or declining. So it's a comparison from the previous years. If they improve a certain amount, they get a progressing. If they kind of stay similar, they maintain. Or if the indicators drop a bit, they decline. So those are the designations based on option B. There is an option B, which is a district-created model. Some districts choose to do that. We've done it for a few years, but we opted to go back to option B, which is how we decided to go, and Ken will talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. So those are the options for the North Carolina system. Now, as I mentioned, for the federal accountability system, they do not recognize the North Carolina system. It's more of a federal level. So they do require that all students fall within the A through F alternative the accountability model in North Carolina based on the 80-20. However, the issue we see with these schools based on some of the programs is sometimes they don't have enough data to calculate those school performance grades on their own. So when that happens, we have to opt on what do we do? How do we get them that A through F grade for the federal system? And basically, if there is enough data, they calculate the A through F grade. However, it's reported with an alt underscore B, alt underscore C. So even within that grade, it is defined as an alternate grade. And typically when we report that, we take them out when we consider the A through F grades within the system. And we can then report the maintaining and whatnot for those schools. However, if there's not enough data to calculate the performance grade, we have 2 options. We look at all the data that would have gone into a performance grade and we assign them to their base school. These gentlemen help me with that when that happens. Or we can use the option of combining 3 years worth of data to get that grade. In the past, I think we've always done return to base school. In the past, only one school has fallen into that, and that is our Longview program. And the letter grade is they adopt whatever school receives the most data points in that return system. So in the past, it's only been Longview. Due to some changes in some of the programs, we anticipate that there might be a few more in the coming years. But we have traditionally held to the returning the data to the base school. And now I'm going to hand it back.
Well, good afternoon, board members. Without belaboring the information that's been presented so far, I just wanted to provide everyone with a little additional background and context into why Wake County selects option B for our accountability model. So these 6 schools and programs that are impacted by this accountability model are varied. As you have seen, it's varied in the students that we serve, the manner in which students and families can access these schools. I think one of the slides indicated we have school-initiated application processes for some of these schools. Some students arrive at these schools and programs through a disciplinary reassignment in lieu of a long-term suspension, or they have some special education needs that need support at these models. And additionally, the approach and strategies that these schools utilize to support these students' need is varied. At one time, as Ms. Malik shared, Wake County did utilize option C. We kind of developed our own model. But through changes at DPI, we have reverted back to option B. I believe in the 22-23 school year that happened. And during that time in transition, of course, we consulted and reviewed it with our alternative schools leaders, DPI, and the changes that they made for that option C, and of course our district leadership to come up with a valid and reliable method to assess the performance of these schools in addition to their school performance grade. And as you guys know, many of the students, or many of our students, face various obstacles and challenges that result in either our district or their family or staff considering alternative methods for learning and teaching. At times, some of these students are entering these specific schools below grade level, and so an alternative model is sometimes helpful rather than just focusing on that proficiency. So the option B just has a larger focus on growth for each student in any given school year rather than the overall focus beyond that proficiency, and some may consider that a more accurate reflection of the student's progress. So as you've heard in just a quick summary, this option B, the state-approved model, has that 20% persistence, so our students remaining in school rather than dropping out. There's still a focus on some proficiency. The standard is still the same to pass our state exams, but we get to tilt it towards that 60% growth, that if a student is entering a school or a school year 2 grade levels below, they might have a terrific year, and the teachers might be doing an amazing job along with the partnership with their parents. But to make up 2 school years of progress, as indicated by a state exam, is often challenging and doesn't reflect the work the school's doing. So it lets us tilt it to that 60% growth model as measured by EVOS. So with that, I think we're opening it up for dialogues and any questions you guys might have.
Everybody at this table will be sick of hearing me say this. They've heard it before, but I'm going to say it again for anybody that's listening in the public. The base 80%, 20% standard that was legislation passed probably 10-ish years ago now is problematic. It's the worst formula in the country. Other states that had A through F school letter grades have either done away with them altogether, or they've improved the formula.
That's right.
Because growth should be reflected heavier. There's been bipartisan legislation. Democrats and Republicans in the legislature have called for the formula to be changed. That legislation has never moved forward. Former State Superintendent Kathy Truitt was calling for it to be changed. The State Board of Education has called for it, and we just cannot get it moved. So I just think it's critically important that we look at this in that framework, and I hear you. I'm glad that growth is better reflected for these schools, but it should be across the board, and I just think it's important for us to remember that context when we have these discussions, and anytime we're talking about those A through F school letter grades. Thank you.
Ms. Rice?
Thank you for sharing. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. You talked about the EVOS data, and we talked about option B, and you reflect back to the 60%. But when you're talking about your EVOS data and what you're gathering from EVOS, please correct me, but just only my recollection of remembering when the EVOS came and when it first came out, it's collecting integrated scoring, right? It's not, there's no other, these are cumulative scoring and testing, and so how would children who possibly, with some students who are in our different learning spaces, really getting data that shows the 60% growth piece when it's based upon EOGs, which have possibly landed them into these schools because of those academic choice or challenges or whatever it is. So how are we equitably choosing the 60 when it's can kind of be flawed around when it's EVOS is only collected based upon EOG scores or integrated testing to determine what's growth and what's not. So I don't even know if I'm asking the right question.
Maybe, can I try? So the EOGs and EOCs are the basis for growth calculations. In K2, it's actually also not for the alternative model, but there is a growth of measure of growth for K2, but it's not part of the accountability model. So you are correct. It is EOGs, EOCs. But I think the benefit of EVOS is you can remain non-proficient, but as long as you are, performing above your statewide peers where you started, and then after the test, if you've moved kind of beyond them, beyond where they wound up at the conclusion of that year. And so if you're building up those supports, the student can grow and hopefully achieve higher than other students across the state or even in Wake County with a similar starting point. But these schools hopefully are helping them get beyond because they have more specialized instruction and supports for them.
Okay, thank you. Then the last question I'll just ask, and I'll send the rest, is what were the challenges or the positives you encountered to revert back to the B model versus the one that we created and stopped in 23?
A few that come to mind. I'll say what in the past that option C, when we were doing it, we had a portion of our model reflect grade promotion. We know that a student that might have scored a level 1 on an EOG or EOC, it's going to be very tough to get a 3 in the next year. But if during that year I might score a middle of a 2, that reflects I grew more than a year in a school year. That's a positive thing. And so often kids are promoted based on their, may not have passed my EOC, but I'm making a lot of progress in catching up. What I believe DPI did during that 22 school year was any district that wanted to use option C had to provide, through a preponderance of the evidence, research that supported a valid and reliable measure of your model. And as we worked with our leaders and everything, looking to determine any research out there about, does grade promotion necessarily reflect student achievement? And it was very hard to come up with that research to support that. Another challenge, of course, when working with our school principals that are keenly aware that proficiency for some of the students that we serve in these alternative educations is a tall ask when they come in. And so we are always looking for an alternative model, and we had our own. But when we could not meet that threshold of just research-supported data for grade promotion to be a reliable measure, I think the outcome was simply to go with the state-approved model, because we still appreciated that 60% of it was about growth. And so even though our students may not achieve proficiency in a grade level, we want the opportunity to demonstrate that our hard work and our teachers and the partnerships with families are demonstrating at least they're growing 4 quarters in the school year, if not more.
And just the final thing, Chair, if I can just say this, is it possible at a later time, or I'll send my questions over, that what I think I hear is, I understand the reasoning of switching back, because we don't want to promote students if they don't have certain skill sets to be productive citizens after leaving our high school spaces. I would really love to see what it looks like with offering deeper supports for particularly our high schools, 9th through 12th graders. When leaving our alternative schools, what other supports or skills have we equipped them with, even though they may not be able to be proficient? Because if they weren't proficient in 9th grade, it's highly unlikely that they're going to be proficient in 12th grade with leaving. If we're going to be honest and address the elephants in the room, what other supports can we provide for our students that may not grasp the complete academic piece, but have other skills that will make them productive citizens and be able to work in the career workforce? Like, I would really love for us to see how are we really supporting those students to transition into the adult world, to be productive citizens, that they can have a meaningful role in society as well, despite not necessarily being able to meet the rigors of formal education, if that makes sense.
Ms. Weiss, we can look at those students that are in our alternative settings to see what, if any, CTE credentials that they have in fact obtained. So we can get that data just to make a comparison to see if they have attained, so they can have some other pathways in
Yes.
order. Yeah, but out.
I think that's important. Everybody's not going to go to 4-year or even 2-year, but they need some type of trade, some type of something, so that they can have meaningful roles in society to contribute.
Thank you. I know that you talk about persisting in school is important. Is there any data, percentage of the students who end up going back to their base school, and how does that impact the data you're gathering in terms of, for this particular?
I think each program has a different timeline for when that might happen. Is that true? So, yeah, if you may.
Sure. So the disciplinary reassignments, barring graduation, 100% of them return to their base school after the set length of the disciplinary reassignment. SCORE has 2 programs, and SCORE A, students that are at risk of not graduating or potentially dropping out may apply to come to SCORE A. And upon that, you're expected to graduate through SCORE A. They typically will not return back to their base school. And then with our 2 other application schools, Mount Vernon Middle School, the goal is always to, it's a much smaller setting, so they get a lot of support from teachers. And the goal is always to grow them and prepare them with the skills so that we can return them back to their base schools. And so a large percentage of Mount Vernon students will either return to their middle school after a year or 2 at Mount Vernon, but often will go to their high school, their base high school. Mary Phillips, a little similarly with SCORE A, if you're coming to Mary Phillips during your high school career, for the most part, you will graduate there. However, there is room for at Mary Phillips to return to your base if needed, which is opposed to SCORE A. And Did you have a second part?
Yeah, my question really was like, I'm wondering if we're losing out on capturing some of the success when a student is going back to their base, you know, so, you know.
Is that return scores? or-
Yeah, they're included in the persistence calculation as a win. So if they do go back mid-year, then, you know, and they maintain the rest of the year, then that counts for the alternative school as part of the positive in the persistence measure.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's
So I think, Dr. Ingrid, the quest is that we pull a little more granular data about what happens with these kids when they return and what does that look like. I think that's the question that you're asking, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just, you know, I just wonder if we're giving ourselves enough credit in capturing that information, that if a student is able to successfully get back to their school, and what happens
And then
afterwards.
start doing
and-
well,
And
and-
you want to take credit for it, right?
Thank you very much. We're going to move along. Thank you. Dr. Taylor, as part of Ms. Rice for getting that data, I would love to see
Absolutely.
the CTE opportunities. We just had the presentation on it, and it was how glorious everyone graduates who does CTE, and I'm wondering if we're just not providing,
And so,
do they have that opportunity when they're at non-comprehensive schools?
and so I'll get with Joanne Honeycutt and Dr. Hill, and we'll make sure that we capture those.
I think it goes in great with data that
Ms. Lawrence, how are you?
with the alternative schools, it's predominantly those students that are there.
Before we jump into this next presentation, just so my colleagues are aware, at a minimum, this will be an action item next board meeting as well. So it was presented to us initially as doing this and then voting on it in one meeting, and the chair and I did not agree with that approach. So we both wanted it to have a meeting or have 2 weeks in between so we could get community feedback. So any questions that occur that we think of after this presentation, because this is a very important presentation that we get. Well, it's been given to me every year that I've been on the board, so. Lawrence.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today, board. Today I am here to talk about the possibility of meal price increases. Just start with a recap of the district. We feed about 21,000 meals for breakfast every day and 54,000 meals for lunch out of our 161,000 students. The challenge is that, of course, our costs have increased over the years, and we are enterprise fund, and the expectation is for us to be self-sufficient. And so as we have this increase in costs, food supply and labor costs, our revenues have to be able to sustain itself, and that is something that has been a challenge for the school nutrition department. So like I said, the purpose is to talk about meal price increases. This increase in prices does align with our strategic plan. 3 things in particular: supporting financial stability, because like I said, the goal of school nutrition is to be self-sufficient, and our aim goal is to have operational efficiency. Maintaining high-quality services, so adjusting prices, make sure that we can keep the services that we do offer to the level that is produces effectiveness and quality products for our students, and then protects the district resources, because whenever we have to come to the school board for resources, we are looking for you to help supplement our budget, because like I said, we are an enterprise fund, so if we come short, we have to get the money from somewhere. So just a little bit of background. The fund balance is, like I try to describe to people, like our emergency fund in school nutrition. When nutrition falls behind a 2-month fund balance, we are able to pay integrate costs in North Carolina. So that means that there's about a $3 million fee that we typically would pay you that we haven't been able to pay in the last few years. Right now, we're operating with a little bit over a month worth of a fund balance amount. And so the goal, of course, is to increase. We always want to have a fund balance. I feel like an emergency fund, just like in your home. Like, I want a 6-month emergency fund when I'm running tight. That's a bad situation for me as a person. Same thing for how we operate school nutrition. So I threw in some pictures so you can see some things we've done. So this year we had Super Bowl celebration and we did serve wings. We had all different kinds of flavors. I actually went to a school and got my own wings. But this was just a picture of something that we did, and the staff did a wonderful job. Switching back, this is the hourly rate of some districts in our area. Currently, we start at $17.75. Charlotte is the highest paying. They are about 20, and from speaking with her, she's at that level because she's competing with employers that have the same career paths in her city. So, like if she's looking at Amazon, things like that, she's trying to be competitive to keep her staff. And so we're not the lowest paid, but we're not the highest paid either.
Ms. Lawrence, that
Yes.
is entry-level pay.
And this is entry level, so they do get years of experience, like those kind of things as they grow up. As they stay with us longer. The impact of benefit increases, so as benefit costs increase, our costs in student nutrition increase because we are enterprise fund again, and so we do have to cover our own labor and benefits costs. And so this year with the budget changes, we're expecting a 36% increase in the cost to cover retirement benefits, our part of the contribution, medical costs, workers' comp, and dental. And so those are percentage changes that we anticipate. And this does not anticipate if a raise is implemented as the legislator has said, because the retirement column and workers' comp will also adjust because salaries will increase. So another feature from us is National School Breakfast Week. We had a new menu item that we wanted kids to try. It's a breakfast egg roll. It was super popular. You see the fresh strawberries on the plate. This will be on the menu next year. And so this was something that I just kind of want to show you some of the things that my staff does. The rising cost of ingredients impacts us. So when we talk about cost increasing, we're looking at food costs. So if you look over the last 10 years, we used to get a chicken sandwich. It would cost us 38 cents. Now it costs us $1.15. Chicken bites, 43 cents, now it's 91. So you see the trend. So the cost has increased as supply, just like you go in your grocery store and you see the cost of something increasing, that same thing happens in nutrition. Distribution case costs increased significantly last year because we had a new bid. It's $3.57. It will not increase this year because we are rolling over. But just to put it in perspective, there are some districts in North Carolina paying almost $5 a case. We actually have a fairly good rate, believe it or not. And this is the price that's added to every case of product that we bring in on top of whatever it costs to get the product. It's like a fee. If we bring things into our warehouse, we cannot pay that fee. The challenge that we have is that we have limited space in our warehouse. So some of this is because we don't have enough space to house all of our own inventory. And each year we bring in over 400,000 cases. So when you think about that $3.57, multiply that times the number of cases we bring in to serve our 200 schools. So I wanted to just break it down and relate it to your everyday restaurant experience. And so often people talk about what do we charge for lunch, and we charge between $3.75 and $4. But what you get for that is significantly more than what you would get out in the real world. Not that we're not real world, but you get a whole cup of, at high school, a whole cup of fruit, a whole cup of vegetable, your milk. In elementary, you get 1 to 2 vegetables and your fruit and your milk and your entree. If you were going to Chick-fil-A to get a chicken sandwich, just the sandwich is $5.25. We serve a chicken sandwich in our schools, in high schools, 3 days a week. It is a whole muscle white meat chicken on a whole grain brioche bun with all the sides that I mentioned, and we serve all of that for the $4. And so I want to put it in perspective because I think sometimes people forget what good of a deal you get when you do eat school lunch. And so I also pointed out chicken nuggets. I try to choose things that I know kids love, that are super popular, that we also serve on our menu. And Chick-fil-A actually offers milk, but it's $1.85, and we do not charge $1.85 for milk in school nutrition. Performance indicators, so things that help us know if we're operating efficiently, is food costs per meal. So we are under industry standards at $1.45 a plate. Industry standards around $1.75, and typically what it is 50% of the reimbursement rate. So the reimbursement rate is typically $4.60, $4.69, depending on your district free and reduced levels. And you want to be under that 50% mark of the $4.69. And then meals per labor hour, we operate about 17.4. That's on average. Every school is different. If you are in the 20s, or the higher the number you see in meals per labor hour, that means that is the least
you have less people in your building producing the meals. And so that's almost like saying your people are working a little bit harder. So the sweet spot that I like to be in is between 16 and 18, but you can operate at 21, but know that your staff will be working with less. Average daily participation is the amount of kids that we feed on a daily basis. Our participation actually isn't that different from last year, but I also want to remind you that we increased prices last year, and typically when you increase prices, you lose participation, and we haven't. We've actually gained participation in some schools and maintained. And so to me, that indicates that they are still happy with what we're doing because we're not losing people because we raise prices. USDA reimbursement. So the $4.69 that I mentioned is the amount that you get from the federal government for every plate that you serve when a child is free. When they are free, if we charge $3.75, this creates a gap of 94 cents that isn't covered by anyone. So that's coming out of our costs. And then if they are a paid student, we only get 53 cents reimbursement from the federal government, and the gap now becomes $3.22. And so when you talk about raising meal prices, that's really the gap you're really addressing. It's for those paid students. And then note that students who qualify for free and reduced, that is not something we decide. That is a federal eligibility guidelines, and so they decide who qualifies for what. And so the majority of the kids who need these benefits are going to qualify under that guideline. And yes, I know that they're going to be, that person who is at dollar over who doesn't qualify. But we do capture a lot of those kids as well because we have reduced students that get meals in the state of North Carolina that they cover. But we also have extended eligibility, and we also have 44 schools in our district that are CEP, which means they get free breakfast and lunch. But that is off the backs of the kids who qualify for direct certification. So we're able to expand our reach. And so we are capturing some of those families that actually need that support. National School Breakfast Week, if you see the castles in the background, my staff actually made all of those castles out of number 10 cans and decorations. They did like arts and craft projects, and we have way more photos, but this was just the staff showing you kind of some of the things that they did. They were so excited. I was so proud because some of those castles came out amazing. Like one school had like dragons on the wall. It was amazing. So historical Wake County meal pricing. So we have raised prices for the last 3 years, 25 cents. And even though that is an impact to the families, it actually is not enough. Our ultimate goal is to match what the reimbursement rate is of the $4.69. But also in order to be financially self-sufficient, we need that number to grow. So area prices. So different districts have different pricing. Something to keep in mind, in particular at the bottom row where you look at CEP, is that Durham is 100% CEP. Charlotte has more CEP schools than us. When you really compare, you really should be looking at Chapel Hill because they have the similar free and reduced rate as we have because they have 31%, if you see at the bottom. But we're like 36, 37, and we still have 44 CEP schools. And so when you talk about why are we different, because technically we are not considered a low-income district when it comes to looking at free and reduced, and that is why we don't have the opportunity to serve all meals free in our district. So I often get this question, so that's why I put it here. People ask me, what does it cost if we would give everybody free meals? This is just the lunch number, but it would cost almost $12 million for us to pay the gap, because we would, of course, take advantage of all the free money that we would get, but we would have to cover the difference. So factors impacting the current situation is our fund balance being lower than we want it to be. Of course, we want to be past, we really want to be at our 3-month mark. Uncertainty around governmental changes, because there are SNAP rules with the big beautiful bill that has been passed that are impacting the state. North Carolina, the other districts in general have dropped their SNAP numbers, their DC numbers, which is what impacts SNAP. In Wake County, we actually have not gone down in our DC numbers, but I think that's related to the fact that, we have more jobs, more opportunities, so people are moving this way. But as a state, we have declined. And so that's something to think about, and that impacts us as well. And those are just changes that are happening. We expect those changes to really show up for us this next school year as the new laws and rules kind of become implemented. Perception of value versus meal, because people challenge all the time about, am I getting a quality meal in school nutrition? I had a parent last week call me. She had a high school student, and she had a lot of concern about what's being served. And one of the things, the first thing I asked is, when was the last time you had school lunch, to see what's really being served. But also tell me what your child's concern is so that I can explain to you what we are doing and show her that we are serving fresh fruits and vegetables, that we are serving high quality products. And then also educate her. She thanked me at the end of the conversation, and she's going to be reaching out to one of you. I don't know what district, but I did give her your area. Because she wanted to learn more. She felt like parents weren't educated enough about how this works. And she said, wow, I didn't know. I really would like to be more involved. And I said, you know, you guys are a great place to start so that she can participate in some of those BACs and things like that to learn more about the program. But just making sure that people understand that we really are giving value. And then potential negative impact for the district is because, like I said before, when we come to you for money, that impacts the other side of the dollar, which is how we fund teachers and instruction and MNO and those kind of things. And so our goal is to operate in a financially self-sufficient way. Within our department, some of the things that we focus on is decreasing expenses, so streamlining entrees, making sure we're cross-utilizing products, so when we have a chicken breast, we're using it more than one way. Increase direct ship, like I said, bringing more things into our warehouse. Managing our warehouse more effectively, like inventory. Some of the things that I've done this year is visited some large districts like us, like Charlotte, Cobb County and Georgia, to learn more about what they're doing, best practices, to see if we can implement some of those things here. And so we are in the process of making some of those changes right now, because inventory on the shelves or inventory that's lost is money that we're losing as well. So that's something that we're working on heavily this year.
Could you, with the new one, share information about warehouse storage space? And cases that may come in that require cold storage versus just general storage. Is there a difference that they need to be aware of?
There is a difference. So our warehouse is, and I can't remember the square footage right now, but it's a fraction of what we really need. So dry storage, which doesn't require any refrigeration, we're actually fairly decent on right now, provided we don't change the menu. So an example in Charlotte brings in their own juice, and we serve a lot of juice because kids can get juice at breakfast and lunch and kind of unlimited. And that's kind of the most popular thing at breakfast, right? So they actually bring in all their own juice, which means they save all of the case costs for all the juice. But that means that they have a truck that takes out just juice and beverages. That's all they take out in one day. So imagine they have a similar population to us. That's how much storage space they have when you talk about pallets and pallets of juice. For us, we can't bring in that kind of product because we don't have the space for that. So that's dry storage, yes.
And the storage unit or the storage is at Rock Quarry?
Yes, so when you see my office on the far right, attached to purchasing, is our warehouse. And then inside of that, we have we have a refrigerator and then we have 2 freezers. And so we have limited space on what we can bring in to put in that. Like there's a side there, it's not just limited, it's also how it's shaped. Because you have the pallet jacks that need to go in and lift the product off the shelf, but we don't have enough space to go down the aisleway to turn to get the pallet jacks appropriately in there, which means it limits storage space because we have to leave room to drive around the pallet jack. And then in our other storage, we stack deep, and so we also have to have spaces to stage products. So when we bring it out, we need a space to get it ready for the trucks for the next day. So an example, in Charlotte, they would have our space. I think hers might be, I have the notes because I went to visit. It might be 22,000 square feet in Charlotte, but they actually recently just took over the warehouse because initially it was central office ran. So she is now running her own warehouse, and she's also adding on cooler freezer space on top of that. On top of already storing all her own juices, and she stores all her own paper goods, juices. That's just dry, not including her freezer cooler. And so we're not even on the cusp of being able to store to that level. But that would significantly impact what we could carry in-house, get rid of the $3. And so I asked her, what is she, distributor? She's using distributor very minimal. So she's not really paying the $3 and something when she's operating on the case cost.
So just as a quick follow-up, when is our new facilities?
August.
So I know that at some point over the next few months, we're going to get a presentation of the Facilities Committee on Rock Quarry, and I want to make sure that as a plan has been talked about, that this particular issue is, whatever is over at Rock Quarry, including CNS, if we need more space, that we are, that's part of the conversation. I'll just leave it at that.
Absolutely. Okay. No, you're fine. That's a hot topic. Increase revenue. So our goal is to maximize free and reduced student eligibility. So I have free and reduced specialists who actually pull our eligibility every single day. And every single day they tell me, Tiffany, I've checked every kid that I can, because what happens is when we get kids that come in, we can extend. But that's something that you can do every day. So they do it every day. So most weeks they give me a report telling me, Tiffany, I've checked every kid I can. That's kind of been something I've asked them to do. Also expanding CEP. So my goal is to increase the number of schools that we have for CEP, because we are allowed to group schools together. So I'm actually in that process right now. So my hope is that I will be able to share some schools that I can expand CEP in. The state has until June 30th to approve all of my suggestions. And so we are on the cusp of that. And I do expect some of them to get approved. I'm just not sure all of them will. And then increasing a la carte. Of course, Smart Snacks is a hot topic as well, but it is a revenue builder for our small business. And so we want to make sure that parents understand that we're not trying to serve unhealthy food to our students. We are serving whole grain, fruits and vegetables, 100% juice products, low-fat ice cream, to make sure that Smart Snacks are a vital part of how we fund our program. And increasing overall meal participation. So some of the things that we've been doing is having flavor labs. I think I mentioned before, we're going out doing taste testing. We are taking student feedback and how we implement the menu moving forward. We even have a menu committee with managers where we sit down and went through every single item, and when they talk to me about, well, what do their kids like, what do we want to see, how can we change it, what recipes can we change, right down to if they don't like what kind of potato we use today. So these are the things that we've made changes for next school year. And just getting kids and getting people excited about what we eat and increasing participation overall. Some other things we're trying to do is increase breakfast. We have some initiatives around increasing grab and go, and also notifying parents about why breakfast is important, how we're going to market to them. You should start seeing some of that, and with the July rollout of new schools, some of the things that we're doing related to that. And so those are some of the things that we're doing to increase revenue. And then of course, the ask today is increasing meal prices. So in elementary, meal prices are $3.75, and we're asking to go to $4. And in middle and high, they're at $4 and asking to go to $4.25. And a la carte, we use a formula to price a la carte. We have to be profitable when we sell a la carte. So we actually bring it in at cost and have a multiplier, and that's why you see it sold at whatever price you see it sold at. The impact from just increasing meal prices by 25 cents just for breakfast is about $93,000. And for lunch, it would be $554,000, and together that's about $648,000. And to put it in perspective on what that money could be used for is that if we give raises of 3%, it'll cost us $1,015,000 and some change to cover just the raises. That doesn't cover if I need a new pallet jack, or I need a new truck, or whatever else may happen in operational costs, it's just raises. And then that still leaves a gap of $367,000 to just cover that. And so in order to cover just the raises and a little extra, we would actually have to raise prices 50 cents at that, and you would have, I think it was like 1.2 million or something, but that'll cover the raises. But it still wouldn't be enough to cover like everything. And so just kind of perspective on that. Opportunities for board support is, of course, I'm always asking people to educate parents, school administrators, stakeholders about the Smart Snack guidelines, making sure people understand how we operate, how we're funded, how we make our money, why we make the choices that we make. Communicate that CNS is an enterprise fund, because I don't think people fully understand that. And then advocate with legislators, because when they make decisions, even right down to the raises, they have to earmark the money for school nutrition. They have to say, I'm giving this money and it's specifically funded to school nutrition, because it does not always come all the way down to us when it's mandated that way. I have spent some time this year having conversations with legislators to express that concern, even right down to how much this raise will cost for the state, not necessarily for Wake County, but I have met with our Wake County representatives. and decide on a financial stability plan moving forward. Like, what does that look like for us? Are we shooting to be mirroring the free and reduced rate of the $4.69? What are our long-term financial stability goals just for us as a district? Question.
So, let's start this time. Are all districts on an enterprise fund?
Yes, nationwide.
I don't have a problem with that. Dr. Jobe, Dr. Yang will come around this way.
Going back how you said we should be looking at Chapel Hill, like how it's comparison, we're still spending 23% more for every lunch. Can you explain a little bit, dig a little bit deeper about why we're $4 for lunch and they're $3.10?
I do not know why they haven't raised their prices, but I will tell you that I have seen that a lot of boards don't raise prices when they should be. And so that would be probably what it is, because at this rate and this, where we are industry-wide, none of us can actually provide a meal for $4.69 reliably.
I'm going to do a follow-up because I asked the question when staff was in here earlier. Because comparing us to Charlotte Meck, and we were talking about are they in the black or the red with their program and how much and that sort of thing, as a comparison to us. Do you have that information?
Yeah, I don't have the data with me because I actually had it at the legislator, but they are in the negative. But they operate different from us in the sense of, because they have more CEP schools, she has a larger budget to operate with. But with all the increased costs and everything, she is operating at a loss. And I can share it with you all, but there was a form that they gave us from the state that showed all the districts, and there are actually a large percentage of districts that are operating in the negative.
That was important. I had heard that, and I didn't want people to think that we are unique and
No.
we're currently facing the same crisis as.
Correct. And even with her, she's picking up the cost like of that, the warehouse expansion and things like that. That's significantly going to impact her. She has, I think she has some like grant funding and things like that, but it's still impacting her financially in order to operate in that way.
Dr. Yang.
Thank you. Thank you, Flores. I like the comparison of the food prices that you made. And also looking at the nutritional value and all that. I think it's worthy to look at deeper dive. But also looking at, if a parent says, I'm just going to have my kid bring lunch from home, pack a lunch. Food prices are going up, at the grocery stores too. And so, it may be also a good idea to have a comparison of a home bought meal and say, okay, how much does it actually cost you to make that lunch, bring it home to school, and then looking at the nutritional value. I mean, of course you can buy Lunchable.
Correct, but it's not fruits and vegetables and a hot meal. So
Correct.
It's completely different.
Yeah. So if you're looking at nutrition basis, looking at the price basis of somebody bringing food from home versus just the convenience of buying it at school. I mean, maybe that can help convince more families to have participation, at school. And also, you talk about the flavor labs. And it just reminded me of, like when you go to the warehouse store and.
Oh, you walk it down the aisle.
Yeah. You taste something and you want to get it.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if there's some avenues for us to do something like that. And when we're, in a place where we'll see a lot of the parents.
Yes, and actually that parent I talked to, because we are planning to try to do some kind of food show or something, she was interested in parents having more opportunities to taste food. And so one suggestion was, this is for anybody, for PTAs to reach out to us and we can have, taste tests like, at a PTA meeting thing. We are able to do things like that. They just have to let us know.
I appreciate everything that you put into this because you really are showing all of the drivers of the costs, right? And I think it's important when we think about these issues that we consider, what it costs to pay someone a fair wage, what it costs to provide not just a meal, not just a basic meal, but a healthy meal. Because, there's a lot of cause and effect that drive the revenue in the program. if you have limited money available for the actual food costs, you have limited options. And if you have limited options, that impacts the meals you can offer, and that impacts how many people want to buy those meals, right? And you can spiral downward. Whereas some other systems that maybe either have more resources or invest more in the system, if they have more money for more food, they can make those meals, they have more choices that they can offer, and they can sell more meals, and that kind of boosts the health and the strength of that program. So I think hopefully this helps show kind of the bind we're in, that as our revenues decline, our options decline as well. And Dr. Jobe, just to your point about Chapel Hill Carrboro, I don't know specifically how they're able to do it differently, but I do know that in terms of their budget, their state funding only makes up about a third of their district revenues, whereas they do have a local option sales tax that comes in and has been able historically to provide them more for more supplemental programs. And with that revenue and a smaller base, they've had some more opportunities. But then if you look at this year, last year and this year, they're also suffering from some real structural imbalances where they're looking to close schools. And so whether their food, the decisions they're making on one side are impacting decisions on the other side, I just don't know. But I don't think there's like any one clear thing that they're doing that we might be able to emulate from what we've looked at in the past.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence, you always do a fabulous job when you present us with information. It is very clear to me what the bind that we are in. I have a comment and maybe a question, but my comment is to Dr. Ng's point about the flavor labs. I would love to see something maybe collaborated with the community engagement fair that we have every year. I think that would give families kind of a first look at what we're offering, and put CNS on display and put your work on display. I mean, I know you're doing a great job on social media. I'll tell you that every single time. Whoever's doing the social media, great job. But my question is, you briefly mentioned when we were talking about us in comparison to Chapel Hill Carrboro and maybe Charlotte Meck, you mentioned grant funding. How does their grant funding differ from our grant funding and like opportunities that we're going after?
So we haven't really, we get some grant funding, but we are looking to get more grant funding. Actually, I had a vacancy in the person who technically was responsible for grant writing. And so I actually just pushed that person through HR. And so my hope is that then the person that I put in that role will have more time to look for like more grants. Because it's not just like the warehouse that she's talking about, even how I want to expand like breakfast in the classroom, like having the carts to actually go down the hallway and things like that. There are grant opportunities to do a lot of our work, not all of it, but there are definitely supplements that we aren't really taking advantage of that we need to be.
And Mrs. Gordon, with a lot of those grants, they are competitive grants and they're very good, but many of those may be to support the addition of new equipment. If you put in a grant to do a line, something of that nature. So those are things that actually help benefit your program, but not necessarily a grant is going to lead to a funding structure to lower food costs or something.
Yeah, maybe I can use money somewhere else as opposed to like equipment kind of thing. Because it's mostly equipment, mostly.
And follow-up?
Yeah, of course.
And what would I know grants have different timelines, but typically what does that timeline or turnaround look like?
It varies.
Okay.
It varies. Because they have different kinds, like they have equipment grants, they vary. And it's not always even from federal either. You have like No Kid Hungry, you have the Dairy Association. It just depends, it varies.
Yeah, and those USDA grants that will come out of DPI, as Ms. Lawrence said, that's going to vary.
Talk loud enough for...
For the kids.
Okay. Yeah, they DPI will issue those grants at various times. They do have deadlines, so they're literally all through the
year.
year. But then those associations, they may come out with something at a different time. But DPI is just constant all the time.
Thank you.
Before I get to Ms. Rice, Ms. Evans had a follow-up.
I wanted to piggyback on something that you said with the community engagement fair summit. Didn't y'all do the lunches?
I don't think so.
Yes.
No. Wait a minute, that was where I had all the tables and the pink tables? Yes. No, so I brought new tablecloths. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I
It was a combination out of
And
it.
the only reason I bring that up is to say that, because I was thinking, because I got a boxed lunch, and I was thinking somebody said that CNS had done it. But what I wanted to say was if it's possible and not like a major cost prohibitive or headache, is I think more of a tasting lab versus just one thing where people can sample a few things. Again, if it's within your ability with your budget and staff and all that stuff. Because I do think, you know, I think y'all have a lot to celebrate and we just need to get more parents pulled in. And I'm very excited about your yard signs.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yes.
Carpool
I did
signs.
her presentation.
Carpool
Yeah.
signs. Yeah.
Yes. I went to her BAC. Okay. Any other?
Ms. Rice.
Echo Miss Gordon, I'm not going to go and keep telling you how great you are. You already know that already by now,
thank
right? Thank you for the conversations that we've had. I just have just two questions. One, I think, is it true that I think your number that we're looking at to possibly cover costs and stuff is like that $5? Like if we were to get to $5, would that help?
It would help. I would have to double check to see if that's still the number, but
Okay,
that would
because-
definitely help, because that would be more than the university.
Okay. And then the other part is, how many partners do you have working with you now, the nonprofit partners around our food and nutrition services that support you with donations?
3.
3 nonprofit partners?
3. And then we have some smaller nonprofits, like even today, we had a group of kids who have been raising, we actually have some really cool things. This group raised money to donate to us from a nonprofit that they have, but then we had another group, they made a cookbook. I don't know if y'all seen that. In one of the, I don't know where it is, but they made a cookbook and all the proceeds go to the Angel Fund, and they raised like $1,000.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, which is what I'm going to say, and I hope our role, of course, is to advocate and to do, and you are an enterprise firm, and so you've told us what the problem is. I think it's up to us to help with some solutions. So I was thinking, considering you talked about how large Wake County is and how great Wake County is and how affluent Wake County is, what if Wake County, with your partners, created this campaign that is always ongoing, that's a standing campaign, about $5, feed a kid for $5 once a month, right? So imagine if everybody, with our 1.2 million people that are in Wake County, if you just took once a month and gave $5 to feed this kid in Wake County. That is, there's some way with our partners of nonprofit that could spearhead, of course, receiving the money, because you can't, and that we really look at it as a countywide situation, that we move away from free and reduced mindsets and move into just nutrition, period, as a well-being priority 2 in our strategic plan. That's important, that we as a community, as a county, look at encouraging people everywhere and just make it a conversation and make it a campaign of sorts, if you would, that who would not give up $5 once a month, who are able, right, to feed a kid or to support nutrition. We have to say whatever that might look like in a campaign of what it is. I think that it's possible and doable with the number of people that live in this county. And in just a fraction of people get a part of that, what it could do to help your numbers on a consistent basis, the same way we have other campaigns that we do at academics and all this other stuff. I think that because this is a a challenge across the nation. We've got to do more with coming up with solutions versus just talking about the problem that we have every year, that you have to come around this table and ask for a raise. And every year, I'm one that support it. Why? Because I understand how you have to operate, even though a lot of families may not be able to support it. But the last thing you said, the last time you were here, it's not our families who may be economically challenged because they're covered. It's our families who are trying to figure out, who are families with a budget, but it's tight, and they don't quite qualify for that. And I think that as your nonprofits and we come around the table and you guys figure out a campaign around that, for people to understand it's not people who are not working, it's working people who are trying, and it's just tight around the country, around where we are. And then how do we, I would give $5 every month to support my students eating. You know what I'm saying? Dr. Taylor give $20. Because my whole point is, most people who can will give more than $5 to begin with. So imagine if we collect that. We would not have to look at our budget every single year to figure out how to replenish what's been lost, and then we can continue on and putting that money into our academic systems and places where it needs to go. That's my final thought.
You can put it on the app. You can put a checkbox on the app when you check out and put your credit card in, and you can just say, and also donate
Right,
$5 a month.
absolutely. Because it might be, because even look at, I think we talked about with the Bucks, what's
My School Bucks.
My
That's
School
the app.
Bucks thing, yeah, or something. But I think that we can raise our voices and do a little more.
Dr. Taylor, I think we've just got
Yes.
some exciting news.
I do. I think I've shared it with the board, but maybe it just because you haven't seen the actual mechanism of how we will be doing that. We've been working with both child nutrition, HR, communications, but we finally do have a mechanism for which on the Wake County website, we will have the ability where families or other outside nonprofits, partners want to donate money to the school system that comes directly to us. They'll be able to do that through ACH, which will be no fee to them. It can be an automatic monthly deduction, just like we donate to any other charities, we'll have that mechanism. The Angel Fund will be one of those categories. So we have, I think, 4 main categories. Our Angel Fund, special education. We also have our Teacher of the Year, Principal of the Year, our literacy initiatives, and then we'll just have a general donation. And so we have had to figure out how we're going to track those, as well as make sure we can balance and reconcile, and then put those in the appropriate account. So we, as part of our anniversary this year, that was one of our goals, is making sure we were able to have that go live. And so I signed paperwork this week. So hopefully we will have all of our testing done and be able to launch that in the next couple of weeks.
Wonderful.
I know Dr. Taylor's going to test it for $20 a month.
5. He's doing 45. It's our 50th anniversary, $5 or $50. Give $5 or $50 for our 50th anniversary. Right? That's how we push CNS, 5 or 50.
So I have a question and a comment, but I'm going to, after what Ms. Posey said, I just can't help myself but to say that given the value of public schools and what it's done for this country, the fact that any public school system has to take donations to operate is pathetic. When you have a state this wealthy and you have a country this wealthy, and all kids, because they are required to go to school, food should be paid for by the government. And it is just a failure of our country to do this and to take care of public education properly after it has been the backbone of building up this country. Now, with that said, I would love to see, going back to the facilities aspect, long-term planning and this is done with facilities too, if we provide enough storage, is that have this, what savings does that potentially give us? What are the costs for us? That way, as a board, we can give some direction on what makes sense to better support the program, because we can't assume that our governments are going to do right by this program anytime soon, since this has been an ongoing issue. So I would love to see that, and I know that's not a next week thing, that's a multi-month issue, and I expect the facilities team to assist with all of that.
I'll be able to share it with you.
My only question really was, you talked about the price increases, and the biggest one was the chicken sandwich. Is that also the most popular one? Because I'm wondering if we get to a point where an item costs so much that we have to not serve that item and replace it with something less expensive.
We have that conversation all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, we do talk about those kind of things, but we also want to make sure that our kids get quality and get something that they actually really want. So
Yeah.
I am not of the practice of sacrificing serving them something great, because I'm trying to cut all the costs, if that makes sense.
I get you. Is there a point, though, at which, you don't have to say, I just want to, you don't have to answer that, actually, but yeah, I would assume that there's as we are dealing with the increased cost of fuel and everything that goes
Right.
into this, that there is a breaking point for some.
But we try to cut and manage in other ways, even right down to digging deeper into the inventory. That has been a place that I've been focused on the last couple of months, because, inventory on the shelf are dollars on the shelf, and inventory thrown in the trash are dollars thrown in the trash. So even just curbing those two things, I think will be monumental.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Go. This is
I just have a
important.
quick question about the meal options. Is that across the district, or are the different
Grade
things that you're
levels.
doing different grade levels?
Grade levels have different choices. It is across the district.
Okay.
Elementary, middle, high.
Yeah, elementary, middle, high. So elementary's menu is more limited than high school, and what we serve at different grade levels. Like, an example, even like with the pizza, the elementary pizza, they have more options because they like that square pizza.
Right.
The older kids like the nicer pizza. I mean, not the nicer, but the higher end, more commercial looking pizza. That's a better way to say it. So we are really trying to make it be about what do they say they want. If that makes, so that's the whole point of the flavor lab, because I had people telling me what they want. Like, when I don't really care what you want, I want to know what my customer wants.
I like that.
And let's serve with it. If they like that, because I don't like the square pizza, but if they like the square pizza, I'm serving them the square pizza. They like the donuts on Fridays. Nobody else does, but I say parents though. But the kids, when we pulled donuts down, kids were like, what? They didn't eat. So you have to look at what they really want.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, I will entertain a motion to go into closed sessions for the reasons stated on the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Edmonds, properly seconded by Mr. Haggerty. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We are in closed session at 3:47. We're going to get, he already emailed it.